This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Shlema to Yecheskel ben Tzila. Okay, so now before we begin, let us do as we usually do, a quick recap on the 13 principles of faith, which we are currently in the process of going through. So number one, we're going to do this very briefly and very quickly. Number one is, the first principle of faith is that God exists. Not only that God exists, God is the creator, and as a creator, God can create yesh me'ayin, something from nothing. That's the ability of God. And also, very importantly, God is a manig. Manig is someone that oversees. God oversees everything that happens in your life, is overseen by God, is looked at it meticulously. Everything is checked off and allowed by God. Number two, the second principle of faith is that God is one. God is one, meaning that everything that happens, positive and negative, all stems from one source, and that is God. Number three is that God is not physical and is not spiritual. God is not a physical being. And even more so, we cannot picture God as a physical being, because then it's a big problem when we picture God as a physical being. And we mentioned this in that class. But again, it's very important to emphasize that when you're praying, you should not be picturing, a godly figure, or any figure for that matter. Number four is God is Rishon v'hu Achron. God is the beginning and is the end. God is someone who precedes, something that precedes time. God is not bound to time, not bound to matter, so something that comes before time and after time. Number five is that the only possibility of praying to anything is only to God and nothing else. And we spoke about this in depth on prayer, which is very, very important. The highest way of prayer is to self-nullify yourself, to lower yourself into realizing that you're nothing, is that everything comes from God. And this is the concept of bowing down. This is the concept of korbanot, which is slaughtering and shechting. The idea is that God is in charge of everything, and God is everything. Number six is, we said that shekol divrei neviim emet. All the words of the prophets are true. Meaning this, the reason why this is so important is because God is, the way that we have the Torah is that God has to let us know what the Torah is. One way that, actually really the only way that God is able to do that is through communication. Communication between God and man. And that is what we know as prophecy, as nevuah. So this is the foundation of the Torah. That's going to be in my mind. And now, it's going to be in all your minds. It's going to be all your minds.
It's like we didn't get it the first time.
Whoever doesn't know what I'm talking about, please come join us next week at 1601 Quentin Road at 8 p.m. every Thursday. Almost every Thursday. Many Thursdays. Come join us on many Thursdays on 1601 for women only. Not people who identify themselves as women, but people who are biologically women. I have to say that nowadays. Even though I'll get in trouble, that I don't care. It probably will, and I'm actually holding myself back from getting into that. Just say one thing. Just one thing. Indulge me. You're born as a woman, you die as a woman. You're born as a man, you die as a man. You want to identify as a cat, you could say whatever you want, and may God have mercy on your soul and help you in whatever endeavors that you want to indulge in, but you're still whatever you cannot change gender. Gender does not get changed. That's not possible. As many surgeries as you think you can go through, you're still what you are born with. I could go on a whole tangent on why that is, but basically it all boils down to simple biology. So if you know your chromosomes, you're staying what you started off with, and that's how you're going to end the game. Then if you want to try again, you have to insert another quarter and beg God for another try, maybe as something that you would more appreciate, to being. But again, that's between you and God. All right. How we got from Nevi'im to I don't know. Okay, number seven. By the way, you should know I'm getting a lot better at this, because I used to just be there and just forget about the class. I would just be that. Now, this is me doing my tshuva. I know how to go back. I know how to, tshuva means return, right? So I know how to return. So I'm returning to the topic at hand. So just by, what tshuva means, right? Now we're going to go on there. Okay, so now The seventh principle of faith. The seventh principle of faith is that it's regarding Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu was the father of all prophets, the ones that came before him and the ones that can come after him. Meaning that Moshe Rabbeinu had a prophecy of a higher level than all other prophets. God spoke to Moshe mouth to mouth. That there is 4 criteria the Rambam brings down that Moshe Rabbeinu was different than other prophets. Number 1, he was awake and alert and oriented. All prophets were alert and oriented, but Moshe Rabbeinu was awake when he was dealing with prophecy with God. Number 2, Moshe Rabbeinu did not deal with metaphor. Everything through God was direct and was direct communication. Number 3, the strength didn't fail him. And number 4, he received prophecy whatever he wanted. Okay, the 8th principle of faith is that the Torah that we have today is the same Torah that we had from Moshe Rabbeinu. Meaning that the same way we shake the lulav, put on the tefillin, every mitzvah that we have is the same exact that we have it from God, from Har Sinai, that gave to Moshe Rabbeinu, and to the Jewish nation. Okay. That is the recap. Let's begin the topic at hand. B'ezrat Hashem, today I would like to try to accomplish 2 principles, 9 and 10, the 9th and 10th principle. We're going to start off with a question, and then we're going to answer it as we go along. The question is like this. Imagine God comes to you, and it's God. It's not like you're on PCP, ACPA, acid, or whatever other initial that that they're selling out in the streets today. You know that this is God that's coming over to you, and God tells you, listen. He says, I'm going to give you a 6-month exemption, meaning you could do whatever you want for 6 months. You're not going to get punished. You want to eat shrimp? Go ahead. You want to do this? You want to do that? Whatever it is that you want. I don't know why people want to eat shrimp. It's the cockroach of the sea. But if anybody would want to eat a cockroach, you could go and you could do whatever you want, and you're not going to get punished for it. Would you take that deal? Do not answer yet. Okay, I was too late. Now we're going to go discuss and we're going to go in detail into this type of question, but we're going to go detail into it in the more of a subconscious type of level. The 9th principle. So now let's begin the 9th principle. 9th principle is like this. That I know with perfect faith, with perfect knowledge, that this Torah that we have today is never going to be changed. It's always going to be exactly the same Torah. There's not going to be another Torah from God. There's nothing else that's going to... This Torah is going to be till the end of times. There's not going to be another Torah. Now, this obviously goes if the prophet comes, and obviously this is going to be a false prophet, and says, hey, there is a new Torah, there's something new that you have to do, there's a new law, you know right away that it's a false prophet, because we know that this Torah is not going to be changed. This obviously has a very, very big problem with Christianity and Islam, and this is what the Rambam brings down. This is obviously opposing those, the people that believe in Christianity, people believe in Islam, because what do? They change the Torah. They change the Torah. Now, when you're dealing with Christianity and Islam is sort of a knockoff version of Judaism, per se. Make sure you heard that, per se. Okay? It's a knockoff type of version. Now, whenever you're dealing with a knockoff, it's never like the original. Imagine you're walking down the street, right? And someone comes up to you and says, he's sitting over there with his foot on the wall and says, hey brother, or hey sister, I don't know what they say to girls. Hey brother. He says, why don't you come over here in this alley? I got to show you something. And you're like, all right, let's do it. What you got? And he takes out a briefcase and he opens up and he's like, you want a Schmolex? I got everything over here. And you're going over there and you're looking at these watches, let's say, or jewelry. Now, these are fakes. Obviously, fakes are different than the real. But let's say it's a really good fake. They have levels of fakes. They have levels. You could get a Shui Vuitton bag, or you could get a Louis Vuitton bag. You could get a real legitimate type of fake. It's something interesting. In America, I don't know nowadays, but back in the day when I used to visit, Manhattan. So there was, they have these people that they would come out with blankets, it looks like Santa Claus is coming, comes over there, walks down, unravels his blanket and says, hey, I got, I got eggs boots and I got this, I know all knockoff style stuff. And they would be able to sell it. But it always had to be different because legally they wouldn't be able to do it. In Europe, at least in some places in Europe, I've seen that they have actual legitimate knockoffs. It's exactly spelled exactly the same way as the kosher one. or it's not kosher, obviously, but I'm saying, like the legitimate one. So Louis Vuitton will be spelled Louis Vuitton, and it's exact replica. Obviously, it's made of like fiberglass or whatever it is. It's not made of like snake leather. So unless you know what you're dealing with, like if you go to me, I'm like, wow, you have a Louis Vuitton bag for, that sounds pronounced, right? Louis Vuitton? Okay, yeah, Louis Vuitton bag, or I've been learning these things. I'm working on myself.
What's that bag that you always say $20,000? Chanel.
Hermes, Chanel, right, with the 2 C's. So you see, like those bags exactly as they were in the store. And it's something very interesting. Over here, it's not likely, you don't see that over there, but over there you do see it. But whenever you're dealing with a knockoff, even if it's a legitimate knockoff, which means what's a legitimate knockoff? Like a real knockoff. What's a real knockoff? Is where they run the factory after hours. So like they're using the same stuff, and they're like maybe they're changing one little thing, or they're throwing in one different, I don't know, string, even one little thing in it. Think about electronics. You have an iPhone, right? And you take an iPhone. Let's say you have a Chinese knockoff version of the iPhone, but let's say it's exactly a replica. There's just like one thing different. Let's say one is costing you, I would say $400 and $500. But I know now it's like 10 million and 11 million. I don't know what the iPhones are going for now. It's over like $1,000. It's ridiculous. But let's say you're going and you have an option of getting a fake a knockoff, but everything is like real except for like one thing for $200 cheaper. So $800, or you have the real one for $100. Which one would you take? Most people will take the real one. So it's worth it to pay that extra $200 to get the real version, even if it's just the fact of saying like whatever, just like peace of mind that you have a backing company or whatever it is, or maybe the other Apple has 2 bytes taken out of it, whatever it is, the story, whatever it is, that you're more comfortable in paying a little bit more for the real version. And there's a reason for that, because a knockoff version is not only even if it works perfectly. First of all, it will never work perfectly. Why not? Because I don't know if you guys are familiar with cars, but if let's say you're driving a car and you go to the mechanic, you have the option of getting, and you want to change something. You have an option of getting like a Chinese version or like the authentic, factory thing. And the authentic factory, option is a lot more expensive. Then you have an option for the Chinese one. But it depends what you want to spend and what you're going to get. But even if you let's say you get a really, really good knockoff one, it's never the same. Because in order for parts to work well, they have to be made for each other. Think about a relationship. If you're made for each other, you work well together. If you're not made for each other, you can try really hard, and you might be able to succeed at it, but it's not going to really fit. The puzzle doesn't really fit unless it's really made for each other. So when you're looking at a knockoff religion, or a religion that bounces off something else, it's not a religion it's like no essence to it. It doesn't feel right. There's something wrong with it. And when you look at like things like Christianity, for example. When you have Christianity, according to the Torah, the non-Jews have 7 noahide laws that they have to follow by. That's it. 7 noahide laws that they have to follow up. Now, let's say you have another religion like Christianity that comes along and says, hey, listen, we have, this religion, and they go on and saying everything that they want to, present and explain to their followers of what they need to follow. Now, maybe it wouldn't be so problematic, maybe, and I say maybe with a very, very heavy emphasis on the maybe, it wouldn't be so problematic if they didn't remove, any of the 7 fundamental principles of the non-Jews. But let's say they start removing it. Then it makes a very big problem. It says, not now, you're following a religion that not only is not true, but it's taking you away from the things that you're obligated to do. You look at Christianity, out of the 7 noahide laws, I was able to find 3 out of the 7, that's a very significant number. 3 out of the 7 is a very, very large number, percentage-wise, of what, when you go through Christianity, it's sort of nullified. Number 1, Evel min achai. So as far as I know, Christianity doesn't have any, isur, prohibition, that you're not allowed to eat like a live animal. But you see many people nowadays, because of this crazy fad with restauranting and like eating out and like trying new things. Everyone's into trying new things because there's like 7 billion restaurants just on Coney Island. That you're like always trying something new. So when you're trying something new, you're like, okay, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? And until you go and you're like a live octopus. I'm assuming you don't have any borders. And then, you have people that nowadays, I've seen it, that people eat live animals. They eat live animals. I've seen live octopus. I've seen baby mice being eaten live. So you have these things. These are Eva min achai. This is forbidden also for a non-Jew. Number 3, you're not allowed to have false gods. What about, all of a sudden you have over here non-Jews, they're praying to a man. They're praying to JC. So that's also, they're following the prohibition of false gods. There's also another problem of immorality. In the Christian faith, at least in many sects, they marry man to men. And according to halakha, they're not allowed to. Even non-Jews are not allowed to. So we see over here, 3 out of the 7, they're already nullifying it. So they're taking another religion, which means is that you have to take more stuff on yourself, and not only do you not gain anything from it, but rather you lose out from the simple 7 that you have to follow. Think about the implications that has. You have like a good Christian that does everything that they're supposed to do, and they're going to get out there and be like, well, I'm sorry, you messed up this, and this. I don't understand. I followed everything. You followed the wrong instructions. And we see the Torah says that, with the Rambam says of the 13 principles of faith, the Torah is never going to change. Christianity and Islam also, they changed the Torah. Well, let's go through 4 Christian changes just to give a little taste of it, even though we spoke about some of these ideas before. Number 1 is the Torah says that how is God going to judge the people? Jews through the 613 mitzvot. That's how God is going to judge you. If you did a positive commandment, if you fell in a negative commandment, that's how you're going to get judged. Non-Jews, how are they going to get judged? Through the 7 noahide commandments. But all of a sudden, Christianity comes and says, no, you know how God's going to judge you? In your faith in Jesus. Be like, what? Where does that say that in Torah? There's not a single verse. Not like even a hint to one verse. Not even a commentary hint to one verse that says, this idea. But yet they changed the Torah to follow their concept. Not only they changed the Torah, they also nullified all the 613 mitzvot. So don't worry about it. You don't have to take care of these. You just have to believe. If you believe, then everything will be okay. Nowhere, and I say nowhere, that it says that this is going to be an option that you have to believe. There's nowhere that it says that if you believe, you're okay, you're good. Find me one source that it says that it's okay. I don't know why, and maybe people do that. When people have debates against Christian, this should be the first question that they ask. Just find me one. Just one. You know what? Not even one. Just find me a half a source. Yeah.
I was talking to somebody and I asked her that question and she said, no, it's not the first step is to believe, but you have to repent as well. You can't just do it again. But if you do, you just have to keep repenting and believe.
Okay, so they implement some things on tshuva, which is very nice, which every single religion, every single religion does. But they put a process, which is the core. The core of Christianity is you have to believe in JC. You cannot be a good Christian and not believe in JC. It doesn't work that way. You can't be like, I follow Christianity, because then you're just Jewish, or whatever it is.
Like Jesus is basically God, so it's like saying
there is some Christian sects that don't believe that he's in God. There's like thousands of Christian sects. We're not going to get into it. We spoke about the majority of them. They do actually believe that he's God. So yeah, there's different.
I think he was the son of God.
He's son of God. We're all the son of God. I'm saying. Yeah, we could go on a rabbit hole on this. But there's no way out when you're dealing with it. As much as you want to try to answer, for them, or you want to try to look for a possible answer for them.
No, I'm just trying to understand them better.
No, I know, and I'm telling you, I've looked not only in the New Testament, and then you should not. There's no reason why anybody should look at it. But I have also looked at commentaries to the New Testament, and I haven't found anything. There's commentaries to the New Testament. The Chachamim, the Havdil Alfei Avdalot, of the Christian sect. What are they're not able to answer it to my understanding, to my knowledge on it. Okay, that's number one. Number 2. There is no concept, not even one little half, 0.5, 0.2, 0.005 of a concept in the Torah that Mashiach is going to die for our sins. There's nothing there that's going to die for our sins. Everybody is responsible for their own sins, and they're responsible to repent for their own sins. If you're going to ask, well, what about righteous people that die and they sort of a kapara for the nation? Even though that is true, you have righteous people that go and they pass away, and that's a atonement for the nation, but that doesn't atone your own sin. That means that there was an impending judgment that was dealing with, and that gets revoked or pushed off, better yet, because of the situation. But you're still held responsible for every single one of your sins that you do, and every single one of the positive things that you do as well. Question? No question. Maybe a question. Okay. Number 3. The Torah also teaches there is only one God. not one, not two, and not three. There is only one God, and we say it many, many times a day. We say, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. That is a verse in the Torah. The idea that there is a three-part God or a three-piece God is irrelevant, and illogical, to be honest, the concept of it. Even if you say, no, listen, they're really all one part. When you start trying to explain something that doesn't make sense, you look like a fool. It's like you're running around your own tail. But listen, it's not really, you go to somebody and say, what color is this? It's black. Like, no, really, you're colorblind. But really, it's dark blue, dark blue. So black, right? At least when you're dealing with men, men, there's very few colors in the spectrum. I know you go to like Microsoft Paint or something, you have an option of every inch that you move is another color, but there's like 7 colors that we know. Everything else is extra credit. But anyways, number 3, that's number 4. Number 4 is that Christianity teaches that the Torah was temporary. JC came, fulfilled all the laws. I don't know how he fulfilled it because he didn't keep the Torah himself. He violated Shabbat. He violated many halachot in the Torah. But whatever it is, he fulfilled the halachot, and now it doesn't have to take place anymore. There are many verses. Just to name a few: Deuteronomy chapter 28 verse 46, Deuteronomy chapter 13 verse 1, Genesis chapter 17 verse 9, Exodus chapter 31 verse 16, Deuteronomy chapter 11 verse 1, and Deuteronomy chapter 28 verse 46, which I said in the beginning. If you're following along, I don't know why I said it twice, just for fun. It all states that the Torah is going to be everlasting. It's going to be forever. It's going to be l'dorei dorot, for all eternity. So how could Christianity, who believes in the Old Testament, how could Islam, which believes in a version of the Old Testament, claim and say that the Torah is, that there's a new Torah? How can you say that? It says straight out that it's not like that. It says straight out that the Torah is going to stay forever. And this is one of the concepts, one of the fundamentals of faith, of Judaism, is that you realize that the Torah is going to stay here forever. This is also when you start realizing that once you start changing something, it's like a rabbit hole. It's like a what is that called? A snowball effect. That once you start changing one thing, you're going to change everything else. It's the second that you have a border. Be like, I speak to people and, they're in this relationship. Okay, so I'm speaking to a boy, I'm speaking to a guy, and obviously switches genders, but I'll never ever do this. 6 months later, okay, I never go ever do this. And then 6 months later, I'll never ever do this. And then before you know it, they got a baby mama, situation going on, and the rest is history. Once you start pushing something off, it's only a matter of time before you push everything off. And that's what you have. Churches, and also this reform movement also falls in this category, is that they marry men to men. The Torah says very, very simply, straight out, you're not allowed to marry. You forget about marry. You're not allowed to be, with a man and a man is not allowed to be together. But at the same point in time, they say all of a sudden it's okay. How do you say something is okay? Because once you change something, there's no problem of changing it. Now, the Midrash says something very interesting. So the Midrash says, before God gave the Jews the Torah, God goes over to every other nation. And he says, hey, do you want the Torah? So what did the other nations say? Hey, so what's inside it? Tell me what's inside it. By the way, the second that they ask that question, they already failed the test. If your spouse comes over to you and says, hey, I want to give you a present. And you say, well, it depends. What is inside of it? So right away, if you answer that, you need therapy. Yeah, so I would recommend you somebody, you have to go speak to somebody. If the second that you start asking questions, be like, well, what's inside of it, then it's a big problem. Your spouse comes over to you with, one of those silver trays with the, silver cover on top of it. I've never seen it. It's always on cartoons, right? But I don't know where they offer these things. Maybe in ancient, England, and be like, Nigel, please bring me dinner, and they bring him roasted duck, and he picks it out of it and be like, here's your meal, and they have that white towel going on there, they got the white gloves, situation going on there, and they just stand there like this, for 2 hours. They were trained by the British Guard, obviously. So, but in any case, I digress again. What are we talking about? Oh, yeah. Your spouse comes inside of you, goes like it. But let's say you love them, actually, right? So you go inside, right? And they come in and say, listen, this is an amazing dish I have. I want to blindfold you, and you eat it and you tell me what it is. And you're going to start asking, well, listen, I'm kind of allergic to, listen, I'm your spouse. I know what you're allergic to. Don't worry about it. But what's inside of it? But the more questions that you ask, the more you realize that your relationship is a little bit messed up. And by little, I mean a lot. And by a lot, I mean you need therapy, type of situation. So when the second that the God goes over to the non-Jewish nations, the other nations, say, hey, you want my Torah? What's inside of it? What does God answer? He says, oh, you're not allowed to murder anybody. Oh, I'm sorry, not for us. Murder is top of the list, man. We gotta do that. Who murders people? Who in their agenda besides Islam, right? Who in their agenda besides a sect of Islam? Okay, you had a different question? I thought I was gonna answer you. Okay.
You said that all the nations didn't accept the Torah because, the question that they asked shouldn't have even been a question, but why? What connection do they have to the God that they should have trusted the thing that they were being given?
Why should they trust God?
You gave the example you gave us as a spouse. Of course, if it was my spouse, but if it was a random stranger, I'm going to question what's in there.
So it depends on your relationship with your Creator.
What relationship do they have
with the Creator?
Oh, they believed it was the God? It was God?
Now, atheism, you should know, atheism is a very new thing. I mean, it's not a new thing, but the popularity of it.
It was God.
They knew it was God, yeah. The Torah. So now,
The Jews.
when God goes over, God asked them things that they were required to do by the 7 noahide laws. You realize what he asked them? He asked them murder. He asked them, adultery, which is immorality, and he also asked them against stealing. You're not allowed to steal. You're not allowed to do that. I'm no, we can't. You got to do this anyways. It's part of the 7 noahide laws. Your great ancestor, everybody's great ancestor, Noah, right? Brought that. There are laws, requirements. There are 7 laws that you have to keep. Stealing is one of them, murder is one of them, and immorality, adultery is also one of them. So how can they say, when God asked them the question, say, well, what's inside of it? Murder. No, not thank you. But you have to do it anyways. You ever ask this question? What type of, how is it that they said no to something that they have to do already? Imagine someone offers you something, and okay, what do I have to pay for it? It's included in your taxes. So Jews, we know, we say, okay, it's included, right? Just obviously we'll take 2. We'll take whatever is needed. But if you think about it, you had to do this thing already. This should be a question in everybody's mind. Why, how, and when did the nations have the ability to say, no, we don't want to do it? And the answer is that in civilized countries, you have this concept that they know, listen, you don't murder other people. Why? Because if I don't murder you, you're not allowed to murder me. It's a very, very good time. If I can't steal from you, it's a very safe type of environment. You don't want to murder anybody else. You don't want to steal from anybody else because then it's going to affect you. It's going to come to your effect. So people want this, they want these laws and regulation into effect. But when do they want these laws and regulation into effect? When they're in charge. So when I'm in charge, then I want it. What's the difference? The difference is that if you're telling me that a supreme being is coming and telling me that he's in charge and he's telling me what to do, then that means I can never nullify these things. But I want to have, people like the idea of freedom. Okay, I know I'm not allowed to murder. But let's say the baby is still inside the womb. And by the way, this is a sensitive topic now because this is recently came, as a passed law. Let's say the baby is in the 9th month, which means it's fully formed. It's a fully functional baby. That if it would be born right now, it would be able to live and be able to succeed as a live being. Yet, according to the law which was passed, you're allowed to have an abortion. You're allowed to have legally you're allowed to have an abortion. Which, what? At 9 months, yeah. You're allowed to have an abortion. And right now,
Just a C-section.
right now it's a...
Is that under normal circumstances, or only they're making a decision between the mother's life and the baby?
No. That's under normal circumstances. Yes. Yeah. From my understanding, you can have a normal. There's no such thing as normal abortion, but if you can have a normal abortion, if we could say that. So what? Why is that not murder? Which means is, right after this came out, a lot of these things came out, pictures with words on them, right? They came out and they said the baby was born, but 5 minutes earlier, it was legally allowed to murder this baby. 5 minutes later, murder. But 5 minutes earlier, well, it's okay. Halakhically, it's, not halakhically, obviously, but legally, it's kosher to do that. Halakhically, it's never kosher to do that. But I'm saying, legally, you're allowed to do that. So you have all of a sudden, why do people want to do? Well, what about, the concept of, let's say someone's sick and someone's dying. Are you allowed to go in as a doctor? You're allowed to go in and offer them euthanasia. You're allowed to go in and offer them to kill them early so they don't suffer through the pain. Halakhically, it's a very, very big problem. You can't do that. But legally, you're allowed, maybe, it's going to come to a point in time that you're going to allow to do it. So the way that they want to, the reasons why the nations of the world didn't want to go and say, hey, listen, yeah, okay, fine, whatever God says we're going to do, because even though that God said you have to keep the 7 noahide laws, that wasn't an option for them. They have to keep the 7 noahide laws. Now it's an option for them. Oh, now you want us to keep it? No, we don't want it. We don't want to keep it. But you have to keep it anyways. But even the ones that we want to, we don't really want to keep it. It shows that they don't even want to keep what they want, what they were required to keep. And this is why you have the concept that once you change one thing, you could change everything else. They want to have the ability, even though every normal person in society would want to have a law saying you're not allowed to murder anybody else. But they want it to be on my terms. Because when it's on my terms, then I could decide when it's okay, when it's not okay. I want the freedom to decide. People like the freedom to decide. This is why people have a very big problem with marriage. It's commitment issues. I always used to think it's men that have commitment issues. Now I've begun to learn that it's not only men, it's also women have commitment issues. But what if I'll find someone better? Already I know you're not going to. Because if you're speaking like that, like what makes you so you have such a high ego that makes you think you deserve better? What makes you think you deserve better? I deserve the best. You'd be like, your mother told you, but I tell you differently. That's what made people stop coming to me. But I'm saying, the concept is that once you start changing one thing, it's going to start a domino effect. And this is why the Torah, what it says in the Torah, that you're not allowed to go and you're not allowed to change anything in the Torah.
Question.
Yes.
Where is support in Torah that God actually went to other nations and offered them?
In the Sifri, it speaks about it. In the Midrash, it's a Midrash in Sifri that speaks about it. Yeah. Okay. Now we can begin getting into the topic at hand, which is if God comes over to you and says, "Hey, listen," like, psst, like a really. Psst, those people in shuls that shushes, which is louder than the people that actually speak, which is more annoying than the people are speaking and no one hears them. All of a sudden you have one person that has a tsunami coming out, and the whole shul hears that situation like that. Imagine that situation.
And all of a sudden, like, bam.
The cloud, yeah. So imagine, like you have, psst, and like God calls you over and says, hey, listen, he says, here's a free pass. You can do whatever you want for 6 months, a year, whatever it is. Maximum a year I'm giving for this class, right? For this hypothetical situation, right? A year, because after that you get used to it. And so you got like let's say 6 months. 6 months, free pass, do whatever you want. Are you going to take it? So Rabbi Moshe Goldstein brings down this type of situation, and I want to share with you a few things that he mentions. Many people would say like, yeah, that sounds good. I could eat a double cheeseburger or a triple cheeseburger. I don't know where they're up to now. Like a quadruple cheeseburger. Maybe they don't have it. But I'm like saying a cheeseburger squared. Like they have, I could eat everything that I want. I could dress whatever I want. I could be whoever I want to be. Like you could put yourself in that situation. Now God comes and gives you that offer. 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is, do whatever you want. Now imagine you have also another offer. 6 months. You take a pill, you never have to eat again. Not only you don't have to eat, that if you eat again, it's going to make you very naughty. You can't eat. The pill is going to give you every nutrient that you need. Would anybody take that deal? The pill? Pill, no. What about the Torah deal? Torah deal also. Okay, we're sitting with a bunch of righteous people. I've asked this to a few men. We're like...
I live. That's why I don't get it. What am I missing out on?
Oh, very good. So you're a righteous person. So it's good.
You're talking about it before, and you find out that it was all phony. Like, what are you missing out?
Okay, so again, so that's a different right.
You gave this class after that class, so you know it worked out. What am I missing out on? Like, I'm gonna get a burger?
Which is true. What?
Do you wear pants for
Oh, there you go.
cooking food, think clothing.
Yeah, I think,
Wait, am I really suffering by wearing a skirt?
No, you're not, but I'm saying
I don't need the pay, like a wig.
I feel like what is that called when you have those talk show hosts? Sitting over there and be like, yes, what if, how they incite people? Here's your daddy. What? Situation that's going on over here, like, and they're just like watching, like, yes, please murder somebody. It'll be great for ratings. But the concept is, the concept is like this. The concept is that many people that I've spoken to, I've actually asked this question to many people. Judaism, would you take a 6-month sabbatical? Bad terminology, but stay with me. 6 months sabbatical from Judaism. It means you can do whatever you want. But what you also have to do is you have to take a 6-month, sabbatical from eating. But you'll get everything that you need. Every nutrition that you need. You're going to take one pill, smells like hay, but you'll be able to take it down with water, and that's it. And that's all you have. Many people wouldn't. I would also, but many people wouldn't. What? No losing weight. Okay, no losing weight. Why? Because I'm speaking to women. I need to say. If I would say I speak to women, they don't have to hear about it. Losing weight, I'll do it. For at least one time, and then we'll see. But the concept like this. The concept is that the people that I've asked, I said for the Torah, yeah, let's do it. Many people, not the righteous people. Many people would say that. The pill, they're like, no. Like, what? One person asked me, he's like, but what happens if, let's say, I smell like a really good steak? Can I eat it? I'd be like, no, you can't eat it. I thought for a second, I'd be like, you know what? I'm not going to take the deal. I'm not going to take the deal. They're like, if I'm not able to eat, like I'm not going to be able, I can't do it. What's the difference over here? The food, you see food as a privilege. Be like, I can eat food, that's a privilege. You see Torah as an obligation. Like, what am I going to... Imagine this question is asked to Chacham Ovadia Yosef, not about the food thing. Obviously, we know what he's going to answer that. Imagine the Torah question is asked that. Like, would you want, if God comes over to you and says, hey, listen, you don't have to keep the Torah for 6 months, would you do it? Be like, what, are you kidding me? He says, I would never take that deal. Rav Moshe, any Gadol Hadol would go and say, absolutely not, I would never take that deal. But yet you ask many people that are not Gadol Hadol, and you ask them, hey, listen, would you take this deal? Instantly. I always wanted to know how, seafood tasted. I always wanted to know how it is to walk outside in pants, assuming that you're not a man, because I hope if you're a man, you're walking around with pants. So, you're going around and you're asking these type of questions. You're saying, of course. Because why? You see Torah not as a privilege, you see Torah as an obligation. Really, this question shouldn't even begin to come into your mind. But why does it come into your mind? Because you see Torah as it's an obligation. Christianity said, you know what? Torah is an obligation. Let's make it into a privilege. All you got to do is believe. Islam, all of a sudden, you don't have to do anything over here. They changed the Torah. Once you start changing the Torah, there's no essence in the actual Torah. Imagine you go to somebody, he's sitting at a wedding, and he's eating challah with tchina hummus, and he's sitting there, and you present him it's a very, very fancy wedding, and you present to him this amazing steak. I don't know what's the most expensive steak. I actually, to be honest, what I really meant to do is I meant to search online to see what's the most expensive type of steak and then say that type of steak. So assuming that I said that, the most expensive type of, tenderloin, standing up steak, whatever it is. I don't know. Right? What is it? A golden steak?
Gold, actual gold.
Real gold?
Yeah. No, it's the Wagyu beef.
Wait, people can...
Beef is the most expensive.
Reiku beef?
Either Wagyu or
Oh,
beef.
Wagyu.
They put sake on the top of...
No, it was hot. It was a hot steak. Yeah. With melted gold on top.
Okay, so assume that you're eating gold, which is... I don't know if you're low on iron or whatever, you're low on gold. I don't know what the situation that warrants gold. I can't imagine that's being healthy. Is that really the thing? They melt gold?
Different foods. But they do it. They put bagels.
Okay.
Facials.
So imagine you eat this steak.
Is gold kosher?
It's a natural mineral, so it shouldn't be a problem. It's like salt. So unless it's additive, I don't know what. It's the first time I've heard. Yeah, it's exactly. It's the first time I've heard any of it. Ask OU. Call up OU and say is gold kosher, and then they'll send you a donation slip. Please, if you want to eat gold, there's
a whole list.
The most expensive steak.
Japanese.
The most expensive cake, Japanese Wagyu ribeye, whatever comes after the ... So imagine this guy is eating hummus, right? But not the hummus with the flavor, plain. Old-fashioned style hummus. Not with the roasted pine nuts and grinded gold inside the hummus, right? There's plain diamond-free hummus, right? They're going and they're eating the hummus. And then someone comes to them with this Japanese Wagyu whatever, steak. Worth at blah 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 dollars, and they say, "Hey, listen, try this steak," and they're gonna be like, "Oh, I need a knife, I need a steak knife, I need a fork, I need to cut it." It's Just like, leave me, please, leave me with my, like, I got this going on over here. It's very simple. The bread is just like melt. It's just like simple. Like, what would you call that guy? Crazy? Insane? Maybe a few other like white lab coats type of a situation. You're like, what, are you kidding me? Someone's offering you this Wagyu steak. For all I know, this could be a raw steak. I don't know what I'm saying. But like, well, there's like crazy expensive steak. It's like offering you and you're going to say like, no, I'm going to do this because I got to do this like work in it. Like in essence, that's what we're saying. Like, you know, God is offering us. God is telling us, hey, listen, I have something that is matok midvash. It's something that's more sweeter than honey. It's the Torah. And be like, well listen, can I get a free pass? Like, can I get like a sabbatical? Like, is like possible? Like, imagine someone comes to you with a steak and be like, can I eat this like in a half hour? Like, can we push this off for a little bit? Do I have to really work right now? But like, if you're smart, an American, yeah, like obviously, like everything else, then no. But like, when you think about the concept, we look at the Torah as like, oh, it's difficult work. God comes and gives us the Torah. Now, God is the creator of the world, creator of everything, creator of the Torah. And he says, hey, listen, I have something that is sweeter than honey, and I want to give it to you. And someone comes and says, well, what's inside? Next, please. Like the second that you say that, you're already done. You're already over with. But the concept is that if God comes to you as a Jew, who is an observant Jew, and God comes and it says, hey, listen, do you want to keep the Torah? I'll give you 6 months hiatus. Imagine someone comes up to you and says, hey, listen, I'll give you a 6-month pass that you don't have to eat steak, and you love steak. Now, I mean, like you have a disease against steak. Like, you love steak. Like, you have a problem. Like, you have to go to therapy type of situation, right? We're speaking about therapy. Like, you love steak that much. If God comes over and he says, hey, listen, I'm going to offer you an option. You don't have to eat steak for 6 months. Like, are you kidding me? I love steak. I want steak. Why wouldn't I want to keep it? You go to the Gedolei Ador, you go to Chamavai Yosef, Moshe Feinstein, Rabbi Levi Yashiv, you go to any Gedolei Ador, you go to any righteous person. We don't have to go speak about Gedolei Ador. And you go and you ask them, you want to keep the Torah? God is offering you a 6 months pass that you don't have to do whatever you want. But like, are you kidding me? I love it. It all depends on your perception of it. Do you see Torah as something as an obligation or something as a privilege? If you see something as an obligation, guess what? That's why Reform came into the movement. That's why conservative movement came. Reconstructionism. That's why Christianity. That's why you have Islam. You have all these other options that came into play because Torah is not a privilege. Torah is an obligation. So it all depends on where you're falling to. The real concept is that if you know Torah, if you know the real Torah, you're never going to want to change it. You're never going to want to change it. Why? Because it's matok midvash. It's sweeter than honey. When we go and we learn Torah, you look at the Torah, and it says Rav Moshe Goldstein, and he says like this. It says, like you read the Torah, and it says over here, and Avimelech said, and then it goes on and says what this Plishti king said. Like, why do we care? And you read about the sheep of like Yaakov's, if it had spots or if it didn't have spots. You think about it. I think if you're opening up a divine book, you want to see like those like single quotes. It would be like, like one step forward is one step closer to your goal. Oh, amazing! Like I never understood these like you have like these words of wisdom, and they always sign their name on the bottom. Dr. J. Like whatever. Like it really is. It's like my motto. If you take one step forward, that's one step past where you were before. This guy's a genius. Give him a Nobel Peace Prize. Apparently we're giving it out to everybody now. So like you have these concepts where we're looking at the Torah, and we're thinking, okay, we want these like one-liners, like in order to take one step forward in your journey, you have to fill up your tank with gas. Be like, that is very true. Unless you have a hybrid. Or you're not taking a car. Like you have all these things. Like you expect when you open the Torah, you want to see, but then you have these things, you open the Torah, and it says, what this Plishti king was saying. What Yaakov's sheep are doing. You're thinking, like, this is the Torah? This is the divine document that we're dealing with? And the answer is yes. It's not the deficiency of the divine document. It's a deficiency in you. There was one kid who had a very, very hard time with mathematics. So the mother hired him a tutor. And the tutor went, you know the story already? Okay. You could put an apple into it. I was going to say tomatoes, but let's use apples now. You have a kid, right? Has a very hard problem with math. And the tutor comes over there and says, okay, little Johnny, you take 2 and you add 2. What do you get? And Johnny's like, I don't know. Like, okay, listen. You have two, and you show two fingers, and you have two, and you put them together. What do you get? And Johnny says, I don't know. I didn't take my medication. I don't know. 2 plus, I don't know. I said, okay, fine. You go to after like an hour long, they take out, let's use apples, right? They take out 4 red shiny apples, the teacher, and says, hey, Johnny, I take 2 apples, and then I add another 2 apples. How many apples do I have? And Johnny looks and says, 1, 2, 3, 4. You have 4 apples. And, everyone's like, everybody, the tutor is like, that's unbelievable. Very, very good. Let's do that one more time to make sure you understand it. Takes 2 apples off. Says, Johnny, I have 2 apples. And then I put another 2 apples. How many apples do I have? And Johnny says, very proudly, 4. And he says, you're a genius. And you're like, I know. And the session ends. And he comes home. And the mother just spent a ton of money on this tutor, and it goes over to Johnny and says, Johnny, what did you learn today? He says, I learned how to add. And Johnny said, really, you learned how to add? And Johnny says, yeah, I learned how to add. And the mother says, okay. She looks at, she has a few oranges. She takes an orange. She takes 2 oranges, puts it on the table. And he says, Johnny, I have 2 oranges. And then I'm adding another 2 oranges. How many oranges do I have? And Johnny looks and says, I'm sorry, Ma, we only learned apples today. We didn't get up to oranges yet. So when somebody goes and somebody learns the Torah, you have the ability of learning the Torah and understanding the concept. But you're on the same level as Johnny learning with the apples. In order to understand the true concept, Johnny didn't learn math. He learned what 2 apples plus 2 apples equals. That's all he learned. He didn't learn anything about math. But if you want to learn about math, then you're able to apply it to every single day of your life. If you want to know if you really, truly know the Torah, you'll know how to apply it to every day of your life. If you don't, that means you misuse and misinterpreted, mislearned the Torah. In order to properly learn the Torah, it's not enough just to read it. You have to actually go and understand it. And this Rosh Hashiva, Moshe Goldstein once went over to one of his students, and he took out a wad of hundreds. And he said, listen, if you for sure never learned one pasuk in the Torah with the simple meaning of it. And the kid said, for sure, I've been learning in yeshiva for 4 years after high school. That's like super, that's like advanced, that's like already working on your master's per se, right? You're like, of course I've learned the Torah. So he said, so the rabbi said, listen, these wad of hundreds is yours. Pick one pasuk in the entire Torah, and I'll prove it to you that you didn't learn the simple meaning of it. So the student was thinking, he says, you know what? He says, okay. He says, you got a deal. He says he took a very simple pasuk. He says, and he used a pasuk over there. And he used this pasuk, and he says, Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe lemor. A pasuk that says many times in Torah. And God spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu. He says, I know the simple meaning of this pasuk. The rabbi said, really? You know the simple meaning of this pasuk? So the rabbi said, when the Torah says Vayidaber, it means it's a harsh word. It's something that's talking harsh. As opposed to Vayomel, which also means that he spoke. But it's a soft word. What in this pasuk is referring to harsh versus the soft? And the guy's like, so I know the art school translation of it. He says, let me ask you another question. It says, when it says God's name, it says Yud Kei Vav Kei. Why does it say Yud Kei Vav Kei, not the word Elokim? Why is it used that word of God and that word of God? The kid says, okay, fine. Okay, I obviously I have more that I have to focus on. I don't, I obviously don't. Oh, okay. So, Baruch Hashem. Okay, so now you see, the kid says, obviously I didn't learn it. Many times we go when we think we know Torah. We know Judaism. Yeah, of course we know. We're religious people. Of course we've been following the Torah and be like, are you? Really, are you? You have to think about it for a second. Do you know anything? And that's a very, very serious, question that you ask yourself. Do I know anything? Like when you start thinking about something, you open up a Chumash and be like, do I really know anything? The more that you know, the more you say you don't know. The less that you know, the more you say that you do know. If you don't understand what I said, just rewind it because I'm not going to say that again. But the idea over here is when you're going to the Torah and you want to try to learn the Torah, you have to connect to the Torah. In order to connect to it, you have to be pure. You can't just learn it as a concept. You can't just learn it as an intellectual, stimulation. Oh, it's interesting. It's, entertaining. People come to Torah classes because it's entertaining. That's not why you're coming to learn the Torah. Yeah, please. It's not why you're coming to learn the Torah. You're coming to learn the Torah because that's the Torah. You have the obligations that you have to do. There was once an African tribe leader that was invited to a big city. And the mayor of the big city was showing him around, thanking him for coming out of his, primitive, situation, going to the big city. And after the whole trip, this mayor goes over to this tribe leader and says, listen, He says, I appreciate you coming out. I know it was difficult, the whole travel, everything that was difficult. He says, listen, as an appreciation for my, as a token of appreciation, I want you, whatever you want, I want to grant you that wish. So the tribe leader thinks for a second, and he says, okay, I know what I want. And he points him over, and he goes to the bathroom, and he points to the sink. And he says, give me that. And he points to the faucet. He says, you want the faucet? He's like, yeah, I want the faucet. And he's like, are you sure? Like, I'll give you anything else that you want. He says, I know what game you're playing. Give me the faucet. I want the faucet. He says, do you want this Home Depot? He's like, I want this faucet. He says, not a problem. He calls the maintenance guy. The maintenance guy unscrews the faucet, takes the faucet, gives it to this Indian chief. This Indian chief wraps it in sackcloth, throws it on his stick, and he starts marching his way back to Neverland. And now he's walking back to his tribe. And when he gets back home, he calls everybody over. He says, you guys are not going to believe what I just have, what I received. And he goes, everyone's gathering around. He sets up, this faucet. He puts it on the table, and he says, watch. And he turns the faucet, and he says, watch how something is going to come out of it. And he turns the faucet, and nothing comes out of it. And then he turns the other faucet, and nothing comes out of it. And then he tries back and forth. He tries a different location. Nothing is coming out of it. He's so upset. He's so angry. He says, everyone goes and tells him, says, this is what you brought back to us? Nothing? He says, you don't understand. He says, water comes out of this. This is going to solve all our problems. Something's wrong with this. He takes it up and he travels it back to the mayor. And he says, I don't understand. He says, when I turned this on over here, water came out of it. When I turned it on in my village, nothing came out of it. The mayor said, are you kidding me? He says, did you pass the pipe? Like, what's going on over here? Like, of course water, in order for water to come out, it's got to be attached to the pipe where water comes from it. In order to get water, it has to be attached to the source. If you want to understand the Torah, you got to be attached to the source. You're going to read the Torah like a science book. You're not going to understand it. You're going to make radical errors to the Torah. And that's how people do. You have people that are either going and looking at the Torah because they don't believe in God. Or you have people looking at the Torah because they believe in Jesus or believe in anything other fake religion. And they believe it. They go into Torah. Of course they're going to have radical errors. You're not connecting to the source. You're not going to be able to connect to God, to be able to understand Torah. You want to understand Torah? You have to connect to the source. How do you connect to the source? You have to fix yourself. You have to you have to come in as a kosher person. You have to come in with a right mindset. Otherwise you're going to make tremendous amounts of errors in the Torah. The Gemara in Nida, let's give a little introduction to this. Now, we just mentioned, they've said that the Torah is never going to change. Meaning the Torah is never, ever, ever, ever going to change. Then we have a question. What about, there's some Gemarot, there's some Midrashim, there's some Chazal that tell us, hey listen, in the future, the commandments are not going to be anymore. Then in the future, the Nevi'im and Tuvim are not going to be anymore. Oh, what are you going to say about that? The holidays in the future are not going to be anymore. Oh, but wait a minute. I thought you just said, and by me I mean me, and by you I mean me, is that what? That the Torah is never going to change. How can we say the Chazal? So let's try to explain that concept. There's a Gemara Nida. If you don't understand what I said, then welcome to the club. But the Gemara Nida, you'll be able to understand it very shortly. The Gemara Nida, page 61b, goes and says like this. And says, the Gemara speaks about Klaim. Klaim is one of the forbidden mixtures. Let's use an example of shatnez. Shatnez is something that you're not allowed to wear. So if you have an article of clothing that has shatnez, you're not allowed to wear it until it's removed. So the Gemara goes and speaks about it. This shatnez, you cannot sell it to a non-Jew. You're not allowed to even sell it to a non-Jew. You're not allowed to even use it as a saddle for your donkey. But this Klaim, this shatnez, can be used for burial shrouds for a dead person. Says the Gemara, says Rav Yosef, says la'asid la'avo. We learn from this that the mitzvot in the future are going to be nullified. Because we see over here that, you see, the dead person can wear the something that is shatnez. Okay, well, before we get into any other concept, we'll understand it the way. Right now, we're focusing on the future, not in the present, on how to get around certain, obligations or things that you're not allowed to do. But says the Rashba, says, how do you understand this? Says, when you say la'asid lavo, you think means the future. But if you don't know proper grammatical Hebrew, which means in Hebrew, Lashon HaKodesh terminology, you say la'asod lavo, maybe it can mean in the future. Well, what's the future? The future can be the imminent future or the very far future. What's la'asid lavo referring to over here in the Gemara? Says the Rashba, what is it referring to? When the dead person is dead, he is allowed to wear, He's allowed to wear, klaim. He's allowed to wear these burial shrouds that have shotness. Meaning, the question is like this: when a person dies, is he still obligated in the mitzvot? Which means, if a person is buried, does he have to be buried in something that is kosher, or could he be buried in something that's not kosher to be buried in? And the answer is, he can be buried in whatever it was, because right now he's patur min mitzvot. But what about when he comes back in resurrection? He comes back alive. What about then? I says, oh no, then he's going to be obligated in mitzvot. Then he can't wear the klaim. Then he can't wear the shatnez. Says the Rashba, it goes and explains this Gemara, says, what does it mean la'asid lavo? La'asid lavo means in the future. What does it mean in the future? The imminent future. The future right now. Meaning that he's dead. Right now he's dead, he can wear it. But when he gets up again, that means that he has to go and he has to wear something that is allowed to wear, not something that is not allowed to wear. And you see this also in the Stechemet, and there's also as the Rambam, that all agree that the mitzvot are never going to be annulled. The mitzvot that we have today, the 630 commandments, are always going to be the 630 commandments. The Ritva goes and takes us a step further and says that in the future, the commandments are going to be, they're not going to be obligated, they're going to be voluntary. They're going to be like the way that the Avot did these commandments. Now, what does it mean when the obligation is going to be turned from obligation to voluntary? Now, in order to have somebody who is in order to be obligated in the commandment, there has to be two distinct entities. You have to have somebody who is an authoritative entity that says, hey, listen, you have to do this. And you have to have the subject who says, okay, I need to do this. But what we all know, that God is everything. Now, historically speaking, through the generations of time, the people and God, we see it as two distinct entities. There's the people and there's God. Well, what's going to happen in the future? In the future, God is going to be so prevalent. Everybody's going to know what God is, that it's not going to be a question anymore like God and the people. Everybody's going to know that God is one and His name is one. Hashem echad u'shmo echad. Everybody's going to know that everything is God. So there's not going to be any more an essence of, in order to have someone who commands you, there has to be two distinct entities. But in the future, it's going to be so clear, so obvious that there's not two distinct entities. Everything is God. When you realize that everything is God, then all of a sudden the commandments are not called commandments anymore. So, hence this is what this is how the Rashba goes and explains, and he says this is what it means, that it's not going to be a commandment, it's going to be voluntary, because we're not going to see it as a commandment. The Ritva, I'm sorry, not the Rashba. The Ritva says that this is going to be a commandment, not as something that is going to be from a commandment type of a standpoint. So now, let's go on to the next step. There is a Gemara in Talmud Yerushalmi, in Megillah, that says, Rabbi Yochanan says that in the future, the prophets, the Nevi'im and the Ktuvim, the prophets and the writings in the future will be annulled, but the 5 books of Moshe Rabbeinu will never be annulled. Says the Rav, goes and explains it and says, what does that mean? So it doesn't mean that it's going to be canceled. You understand what I just said? That it's going to be, so the Rav says it's not going to be canceled. What does it mean? It says that it means that the 5 books of Moses will always be read in public, but the Tanakh, the rest, the Nach, the Nevi'im and Ktuvim will not be read in public during the times of Mashiach. Well, we'll try to explain this in a little bit. But in order to understand this, the Rav goes and it says there's one exception. Anybody know what the exception is? Megillat Esther. Megillat Esther, even in the time Mashiach comes, it's also going to be read publicly. What is the difference between Megillat Esther than any other of the Tanakh of the Nach books that is going to be read in the time of the Mashiach? And the answer is that when you look through the stories of the other Nevi'im Uktuvim that speaks about the miracles that happen. So what does it speak about? It speaks about the miracles that happen, that God manipulated nature. You look at the Exodus, God manipulated nature. You look at Matan Torah, God manipulated nature. You look at many other things, Sukkot, God manipulated nature. What is the story of Purim? The story of Purim, which we're coming up on, the story of Purim is something that God didn't manipulate nature. God used nature within it. Which means is that if you go and you say, hey, listen, God is all powerful, all able to do anything, and look, you see the Exodus, you see Matan Torah, you give a list of examples, and say, yeah, listen, God is very powerful. How is He able to control the world? If He manipulates, if He changes nature, He's able to control the world. But can God control the world without manipulating nature? That's what Purim is. Purim is a level that is a lot higher than all the other levels. Because all the other levels, God manipulated the nature in order to show that He has the power over it. Purim, God says, I don't need to manipulate anything. I could use nature to manipulate my own will. And that's what happened on Purim. Says the Rav, it goes and explains like this, and it says that when you look at all the other, when you look at all the other holidays, when you look at all the other, stories in Tanakh, that's something that God had to manipulate nature. So that level of like awesomeness is over here. But Purim, which is God didn't have to manipulate anything of nature. God used nature. That's a lot higher level. That, because it's a higher level, that's going to stay also in the time of Mashiach. Let's go one step further.
What do you mean that it's going to be read privately, like not in shul on Shabbos?
Right. So it's not going to be a public type of, which we have nowadays in that aspect. And if you'll have a little more clarity in it.
They'll teach it in school, kind of thing, like that kind of public is okay, or it's just like as an official.
That's a good question. What's going to happen in Mashiach with the schools? I don't know. That's a very good question. I don't know. That's a good question. Okay.
What could be a example of manipulation?
You look at Pesach, for example, Exodus.
No, that I understand. On Purim, I thought you were going to say that people through the davening made this change of this.
So I was actually thinking about creating a whole class just on that for Purim coming up, and I might do that. So if I do that, I'll speak about it. What? I did it already.
What's the role of Hashem within the nature? What you say, through people, or who changed the?
When God changed the story in Purim, God changed it without having any outward miracles, meaning that it all changed within the people. It all looks like it's very natural. That's a higher level of showing God's manipulation, God's power and control over humanity, over the world, than God manipulating nature. Because that shows that God could change something even through the people, even through the nature, even through the...
Still God did.
Yeah.
It's not that we through davening and stuff.
Ultimately, everything is from God. Everything is from God. Yes, did we do something towards it? Yes, we did tshuva, we did the tshuva, we did tefillah, we did the fast, and we did all those things. But ultimately, everything is from God. Okay, so now the Midrash in Esther, in the 9th chapter, it says in the future, all the festivals will be annulled, but not the festival of Purim. We're almost finished-ish. I think I only finished one. Okay, wait. The Midrash Mishlei, also the 9th chapter, says that the Day of Atonement, the Yom Kippur, is also going to never be annulled. Kind of went in a double negative over there, but the holiday of Purim and Yom Kippur is going to stay also in the time of Mashiach. Says the Radbaz. Says, you know why? Says in the time of Mashiach, there's going to be so much joy, there's going to be so much happiness that all the days are going to be as if it's going to be a holiday. Because what's the holidays? The Chagim, the Yom Tovim. The Yom Tovim, we know that there's an obligation. The Rambam says you have to be happy. And how do you have to be happy? The Rambam says you have to have meat and wine in order to increase your happiness. But in the times of Mashiach, everybody's going to be happy. It's going to be such a high level of happiness. You're not going to have to work. You're not going to have to do almost anything. You're going to be able to serve God just like it's going to be holidays. So the level of happiness is going to be the same. It's going to be as if the holidays were nullified. The holidays are no longer as in effect. Now let's take this a little bit further. Purim. Why is Purim not going to stay in there? If all the holidays are going to be so powerful, because we're going to have so much happiness, just like we have on holidays, we have the Simchat HaChagim, just like on every single day, just like we have on holidays. Why is Purim going to be any different? Because Purim, we need to have an extra happiness in there, right? We have a mitzvah, we have to drink ad lo yada. Not for today. Different class. We have to drink until you know the difference between Chris Mordechai and Bless His Haman. We have an extra level of happiness that needs it. It says, for that you need Purim also to have in the time of Mashiach. Happiness we're going to have. But the extra level of happiness, we still need Purim. What about Yom Kippur? Yom Kippur is not a day of happiness. It's a day of atonement. It's a day of self-affliction. It's not going to be, this is not going to be, rampant in the time of the Mashiach. This is not going to be superseded by the joy in the time of Mashiach. Hence, we're going to have to keep Yom Kippur, and we're going to have to keep, Purim. The Barbanel also gives an interpretation that says that in the, right now we have a lot of our holidays as Zecher L'Tziat Mitzrayim. We're having it in merit of Yitziat Mitzrayim, the miracle of Yitziat Mitzrayim. But in the time of Mashiach, the miracles will be so great that it will be as if the miracles of previous will be nullified, because the miracles of the time of Mashiach is going to be so much greater that it's going to be as if it was nullified. So this is how we understand these concepts. Now that we said the idea that Torah is never going to be changed, the Torah is going to be exactly the same. How do we deal with the rabbis? Oh, the rabbis. Everyone always has problems with the rabbis. The rabbis add the Torah. The rabbis add laws in Torah. So it's a good thing that we spoke very, very intently on this, in our divinity series. So we'll only have to do a brief recap. Now, when the Torah, when you have these rabbinical laws, it says if you telling me that the Torah is never going to be changed, if you're telling me the Torah cannot be added or cannot be removed, how do the rabbis add the laws? So it says in Devarim, chapter 13, verse 1, it says you're not allowed to add, you're not allowed to remove from any of the Torah laws. So when is this obligation? When is this problematic? When this is problematic is if you go and if you add a law to the Torah and you say, this is what the Torah says. Meaning, let's use an example. The example that we gave last time we spoke about this is the Gemara, the Pasuk in Exodus, in Shemot, chapter 23, verse 19. It says, Lo tevashel gedi bechalev imo. You're not allowed to go and you're not allowed to cook a kid in its mother's goat. You're not allowed to cook a kid's mother's goat. Meaning, mother's milk. Thank you. I'm translating wrong. A kid as a baby goat, thank you, in a mother's, which is the mommy, milk. You're not allowed to cook meat and milk together. So you see that interpretation says, what about poultry? What about what about fowl? Let's say, can you cook chicken with milk? The Torah just says it's just referring to meat. It's just talking about a goat. What about anything else? What about other ideas? So says the rabbi, says no, you can't even do that. That, by the way, it's a rabbinical prohibition. Biblically, you're allowed to do that. Rabbinically, they saw that people were confusing between poultry and between meat. Says, because you're confusing, let's make it a flat statement. You're not allowed to do it. You're not allowed to do any of it. So that is allowed. To say that, listen, biblically, this is forbidden. Rabbinically, this is forbidden. But if the rabbis come and say, hey, you know what the Torah means over here? It means not only that it means by meat, by an animal, it also means by meat by a poultry as well. It says, that's what the Torah means. That's you're changing the Torah. You're adding interpretation to the Torah. What?
The amount of time people wait. Much people wait different times.
That's already more custom also as well. That's already yeah. But so it's more custom to it's more a custom. The concept is how long is the food going to stay that it's not going to stay, it's not going to mix together. Really referring to what it stuck in your mouth. There's different concepts on it. So now, when we look at these things, the rabbis first of all needed to have this power. How do we know the rabbis needed to have this power? If you think about it, God gave the Torah. God gave the Torah to the Jewish people. Now the Torah, there's many other concepts that come in time. What about electricity? Electricity didn't happen in the time of Torah. So what happens then? Do we have to wait? Do we have to say? Are we allowed to? Are we not allowed to? God gave the ability for the Rabbanim, for the rabbis to go and say, hey, listen, you decide. And where do we see this? We see this in Devarim, chapter 17, verse 9 through verse 11. It says over there straight out that you have to listen to the rabbis, to the judges. And if the rabbis tell you something, you're not allowed to divert from them. Lo yamin v'lo small. You're not allowed to divert from them, neither right or left. You're not allowed to divert from them even a little bit. You have to follow exactly what they say. What is the source that the rabbis can add these rabbinic laws? And again, they could add rabbinic laws. They cannot add biblical laws. The Gemara in Moed Katan, page 5a, goes and says, there's two sources. One in Leviticus, in Vayikra, chapter 15, verse 31. It says, V'izaltem et b'nei Yisrael mitumatam. You have to separate the Jewish nation from their impurities. And there's also another pasuk in Leviticus, in Vayikra, chapter 18, verse 30. It says, U'shematem et mishmarti. You have to guard, you have to observe my charge. It means you have to guard my charge. It means you have to make that extra precaution to make sure that you don't fall into it. So we see that the rabbis not only have the ability to do it, they also have the obligation that if the Jewish nation is going to fall off and the Jewish nation is going to need a precaution, we have to add it. Now we have to understand, why was it added by the rabbis? It was added by the rabbis only because they needed to add it. Beforehand, there were people who were on such a high level they didn't need it. But once the generation fell, they needed to add it. The example that we gave in the previous classes was a formula from a mother's milk. Now, when someone created formula, that's not awesome, that's better than mother's milk. No, it's not better than mother's milk, it's a substitute to mother's milk. A baby gains so much more nutrients and emotional and physical, everything from a mother's milk more than formula. But when the people saw that there was a deficiency in it, they needed to create formula, so they created formula. But it's not because it's more beneficial than the mother's milk. The mother's milk is more beneficial. But now that there was a deficiency, people weren't able to do it, people were going to work, people, whatever it was, their excuses, they didn't have the ability to feed from the mother. Now the people had to create for the babies a formula. So we have to understand the concept of the rabbinical laws is not something that originally was intended. It wasn't originally needed because people were on such a high level that they didn't need it. But now that they fell to the level, now they need it, now they have it. Understood? Okay, question.
No, so if
Just do one.
someone's past, present, future, time, whatever, why didn't he just add it anyway? Even so, that would not necessarily apply to the generation that's on a holy level because they weren't troubling with it. But Hashem would know that the generation is going to fall. He showed Avram everything. Like Avram saw that there was going to be destruction and that we're going to go down. So why not just add it in the beginning?
Because they didn't need it in the beginning.
But just because they didn't need it, like they're a lot like.
It's a higher level if you don't need it. It's a lower level if you do need it. Like the concept is that there's going to come a time that people are going to need it. You think about anything, compulsory education. There's many things that you didn't need, but now that you need it, okay, here it is. It's not like they could have invented formula before they needed it, but there wasn't a need for it. If there wasn't a need for it, there's no point of bringing it out.
The point is that Hashem did know about it, so why not just bring it in and it'll become an effect when it needs it, like it's already there.
So not only Hashem knew.
This whole machlok is with like, oh, rabbis add this and rabbis add that.
The only machlok is between people that are ignorant and people that know what they're talking about. But the rabbis, when they created this, it was already in the Torah that they have the ability to do it. Not the ability, they have the obligation to do it. And those are verses that I just quoted. It was an obligation. God knew this, and that's why He put it in the Torah. So there's going to come a time that you're going to need to implement these things, and hence these are the verses that you have to follow. These are the rules you have to go by. Any other questions? Yeah. Whoever said yeah.
Where did the 10th come in here?
What?
Where did the 10th commandment come in?
Which 10th commandment?
10th commandment.
I didn't get up to it yet. So, I thought I would. Any other questions? We just got through 9 today, not 10. Okay. All right. Chazak u'baruch.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.